Hi, I'm Russ Camarda, an independent filmmaker and actor in New York, and in between the chances I get to do my creative projects, I love to sit down and talk with other artists to see how it is they do what they do, how they take art and use their craft to reveal truth to an audience. So in this series of conversations, you'll meet some people you may recognize, some people you won't recognize, but they're all independent artists, and we'll get in depth in a long-form conversation to see how it is they do what they do. Welcome to Art, Craft, Truth. This time on Art, Craft, Truth, a true pioneer in her craft, Keiko Tsuyama. She was the first female reporter to join 70 male colleagues on the financial beat of the Kyodo News, Japan's largest wire service. She's a columnist and writes for prestigious magazines in Japan. She covered the 2008 presidential election from the Iowa caucuses all the way to Inauguration Day. Some of the people she's interviewed include Mark Zuckerberg, Eric Schmidt, the Google CEO, Steve Chen, the founder of YouTube, Ambassador John Bolton, and Ted Turner. This is a great conversation that dives deep into the craft and responsibility and the place journalism has in our society, as well as highlighting all the interesting cultural differences between East and West in that field. I hope you enjoyed as much as I did. Keiko Tsuyama. Thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you so much for inviting me for this, exciting project. I'm just a little bit nervous because I've never been interviewed on video. So.
Okay, well, I'm very nervous because I'm so far out of my depth of knowledge and expertise with what you do. So I'm really curious, and I'll probably ask a lot of dumb questions. So you'll have to stay with me on that one and kind of walk me through it a little bit. But we'll have fun. And what I hope more than an interview, I try to make these. It's a conversation. So I'm a filmmaker and an actor and stuff. So you can turn the tables on me, and if you find something interesting you want to ask, please, we'll turn it into a conversation. I don't want it to be like I'm interviewing you. We're talking about our crafts, and that's what I'm hoping for.
Sure.
All right. So first of all, let me make sure I get your name pronounced correctly. It's Keiko Tsuyama?
Yes. Keiko Tsuyama. And then I always say to people, it's Keiko, like J-Lo.
I like it. I like that.
Because, it's spelled out Keiko. So a lot of people pronounce it Keiko.
Yeah. Keiko, like J-Lo.
Yes. Keiko with a little A,
right.
like J-Lo.
Right. Well, we're going to... I try and go in a linear fashion kind of through your career and life and stuff, but if I find things, we kind of bounce around different tangents, like we might take a little different roads. But I was reading somewhere recently about you, just doing some brief reading, that you like, especially recently, you like to talk to like the regular folks. The regular average American folks, because you've talked to some high-powered big names, but you love the factory worker and that. And in me, you have that. I am the regular average American guy. So I'm curious, what is it about that? Let's start with that. What is it about that's interesting to you now?
I think, finally I understood that. Because I started my career as a reporter with the largest news agency in Japan. It's called the Kyodo News, and it's Japan's Associated Press.
Right.
So, they had 1,000 reporters, and, we are competing with other news organizations who will get a big interviews, like, chief executive officers, the president of the United States. So that was our criteria, the top criteria back then. But since I became freelancer, and my focus has been always kind of giving a human face or human touch into the stories that I write. So I was in business news beats. So it's all about money, but money is about people too,
right.
Ultimately. So I always try to put some kind of sentences or paragraph that focus on human interest.
So what about the particular sort of average American culture that you discovered as you talked to these people? What did things surprise you? Did you learn things about this culture that you didn't know? Like, what have you come to learn from that human touch on the American side?
There are so many things. It's really hard to pinpoint, but every day is learning because I talk to different people.
Right.
But so recently I am reporting about the anti-Asian hate,
Right.
crime and harassment. So I am covering protests in New York City, and then I'm talking to my Asian decent friends in my neighborhood. And then I realized and then almost discovered that the hate or towards the Asian people have been here for many, many, many years. But having lived in the city for 18 years, I just didn't see it. So, for example, when I'm walking on the street, people say "ni hao," and I was just thinking, it's just a hello. So I said hello, not "ni hao," because that's not my language.
Right.
But it's a sexual harassment, and then it's a racial harassment as well. And then I finally understood that, covering this, very sad trend in the United States. So every day, I discover different things from the conversation with my neighbors and people.
Yeah, well, it's the paradox of this experiment that is our country, that it's such the foundation is built on this welcoming, sort of open, thing where everybody from other places can come and be one society, but it's so filled with fear of the other, and when they light the fires under that, this is the kind of stuff that bubbles up, and it's really been the history of this country is this paradox of, bring us, you're tired and you're poor and you're hungry, and at the same time we're afraid of everybody outside. So,
Right.
It's sort of this schizophrenic version of who we are. It must be interesting to see from your perspective.
Yeah, but in terms of journalism, it's very important for me to experience that by myself, so that I can convey my message to Japanese readers, and then most of them are not familiar with the United States culture or Americans' mindset, and many of them never left Japan. But when you leave Japan or any Asian countries, you are racial minority. And I want people to understand that.
Right.
So it's a good lesson for me. And it's a good lesson for my audience as well.
Right. Well, that's we're going to talk about that. This is really what I want to get into, is the craft of journalism, what you think the responsibility of the journalist is, and how you actually do it, like how you actually formulate that stuff. But we're going to go back a little bit first. And what was it like as a child for you in Japan, particularly before sort of the equal boundaries were set for women? Yeah, for it to do that. Did you always want to be a journalist as a kid? Was that something you could dream of as a girl in Japan?
Yes. I always liked writing, editing my stuff, writing short stories. And then when I entered the university that I went to, I kind of ran out of what to write about. So that's how, I started talking to different people, not students of my age. So I started working at a cafe. I worked at a sports supply shop. I was tutoring kids, and then I found something to write about every day.
Okay.
So I was just thinking that it would be really nice if I get paid just by writing.
Right. That would be nice.
Right. So that's how I try to get into news organizations.
So let me ask you this question. Before you changed your mindset to do that, you said you wrote short stories and things as a kid. Like what kind of things? What kind of fiction and things would you write? What interested you as a child?
I there are many, but they are always about searching for myself or someone's life. What it means to be real adults or real myself. And accidentally, I just finished reading Becoming, written by Michelle Obama.
Okay.
And that's kind of resonates what I have been doing, because she wrote that she was 54 years old when she wrote that book, but she is still developing herself.
Right.
So I think, in that process, I was writing about maybe myself, but when I meet some different people from, different background and different generation, I was always looking for, why they like their jobs or why they like what they're doing. I would like to ask you why you are, doing this. But I think that's the kind of motivation that I've been writing short stories back then.
Right. Well, I think that's really interesting, and it's probably right to this moment. What fuels your work is this. It's like a search for yourself, a connection with other people. What's the common sort of denominator between us as people, and that's what we do as actors and artists. We try and reflect truthful things to an audience so that they can see themselves. That's the whole idea, to hold the mirror up so they can see themselves.
Right. And then also, luckily, I went to a missionary school. It's a secondary and high school, so 6 years.
Okay.
And it was founded by missionaries from Michigan State. And it's the oldest girls' secondary and high school in Japan. So you don't need to be a Christian to enter that very privileged girls' high school, but you have a service every day, and you read Bibles, and 30 years later, graduating from that high school, I realized that what they are doing was based on liberal studies concepts, which is very unusual in Japan. So through, if it's science or it's biology or English or Japanese, they are trying to teach us who you want to be.
And that's different. That's sort of outside of typical sort of Japanese culture.
Right, culture, and then I think mandated curriculum.
Okay.
Mandated by the Department of Education.
Right.
It's far from that. So
what a blessing for you. You got an education that was unusual.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely.
So when you first started to go into the field, how did you break in? What were the kinds of things that you got to do? What were the kind of stories you were doing? What were your first jobs in journalism? And what was journalism like then?
I started with a crime beat reporter in a local. It's a big city, but it's called Fukuoka. It's in the western island, and I started visiting police stations.
Wow.
Fire stations, and nobody taught me what to do, so I just so I just remember the first day, my senior reporter took me to the biggest police station in the city, and at the entrance he said, "Okay, bye, this is your place, start working."
Wow.
So I didn't know who to visit, so I just went to a reception, and then I talked to this young, beautiful lady. I am from Kyodo News. It's the biggest news agency in Japan. Uh, could I talk to somebody here?
Wow.
So she knew, where and then who to guide me, because she knew a lot of crime beat reporters. So she took me to the chief of police station.
Wow. So what are for a young woman like you with given no instruction on what to do, what are some of the first kind of questions, and are you writing it down on a pad? Are you like how are you doing it? How are you actually doing the job? Did you know what questions to ask, that kind of a thing?
Right. So fortunately, it was before the internet.
Yes.
So all my senior reporters were filing the excerpts of newspapers. So I had a book of crimes that weren't solved in the precinct of that biggest police station.
Right.
So I just read all the stories, and then I went to see the chief of police station and deputy chief of the police station, and then I started asking, "Sir, what's going on with this case? What's going on with the case?" Then slowly I started learning what to talk about. You just can't talking about the unsolved crimes so all the time every day. So I started talking about baseball games, sumo wrestling.
Wow. Wow.
Which was really interesting.
And yeah, I was going to ask, you found that it must have been very interesting first of all, when you started on the crime beat as a young woman in Japan, was it easy to get the answers? Were people that you talked to, were the stories easy to open up and write, or did you have to work a little bit to get stories?
So I have to tell you, when I became a reporter, it was 1 year after that the Japan's government mandated equal footing for men and women.
Okay.
So there are very, very little women reporters. So when I was hired by the Kyodo News Agency, there were 44 new coming reporters, and women were only 3 back then. But when you are visiting cops' investigation room and visiting the chief of special task force, I think they were welcoming me because just women are very rare in that area.
Right. They were probably as fascinated by you as you were with the story. It was such a new thing probably for them, I would think.
Right. But I really appreciate these 2 years that I covered police stations. Some younger journalists don't like to be in crime beat because it's too much. You have to cover murders. And the worst thing is you have to go to visit the victim's family and to get the photo of the victim. And then that's the worst part of crime beats.
Right.
So some younger journalists don't like that, but I thought it's important to experience something like that, to feel that pain from real people.
Right.
And number 2, it was a really good opportunity to learn government or municipal government. A police station is a good miniature of a government, in such a small building, but there's ranking, and you have to know who to talk to first,
Right.
and then maybe you can talk to cops, like average cops.
Right.
So that's helping me even after I came to the United States.
Right.
So when I go to a fire scene, I know who to talk to. It's the chief,
Right.
not the regular guys.
Right. Right.
And then also, I started covering presidential campaign back in 2008. It's Obama's campaign.
Right. Right.
And then every time I go to rally, I know who to talk
Right.
from, their attires or, how they look. So it's really helping me.
Interesting. Interesting. So yeah, so you learned the hierarchy of things and
Right.
how to manage that and manipulate that to get your way inside to get the right answers. This is an interesting
Exactly.
question. I imagine that in journalism, establishing rapport and trust is important. Is that like to get the subject to kind of connect with you in a way where they can trust and feel comfortable? Is that something you learned right away, or is I would imagine that's still important to do?
That's very, very important. But in the meantime, that's very challenging to yourself as well. You really have to be honest with someone, and then you always tell the truth. You never manipulate what I am talking about. You have to think about what you say before you say.
Right, right.
Right. And but I think I learned a lot more about that kind of relationship after I came to the United States.
Sure, right. So as you moved on in your career, you kind of, I mean, people are going to see as we keep talking here that I'm really blessed and honored because you're the first real pioneer, trailblazer person I've ever talked to, because you were weren't you the one woman in this in the when you started to do the business news and stuff like that, the Wall Street Journal type stuff
Right.
of Japan, you were alone as a woman, basically, right?
I think so. Yeah, I have many firsts, but it's about timing because it was right after that the government mandated the law for equal footing between men and women. But I was the first reporter to be in the business news beat department in Kyodo News out of 70 to 80 male reporters.
Wow. And what was that like? What was that like for you then? Was it were you aware of that? Like, did you know how unusual that was?
It was really strange. They didn't know how to deal with a female reporter. So actually, I wanted to be a business news reporter 2 years before I was promoted to the department. But one of the head of the department said, whoa, please wait for 1 to 2 years because we are not ready for female reporter.
Wow.
And but that was the same thing for the other department as well. Something like political departments, foreign, overseas news departments, all the other departments except culture department, culture and life department.
So all the heavy categories, politics, business, they were saying, why don't you just wait for a bit? But the lifestyle stuff was stuff that they thought women should be doing or something. Is that
right? Correct.
So how did you? So did you have to wait, or how did you get in? How did you finally break through that ceiling?
It was so I was put into a kind of team that produces weekly feature stories. So it's not like, it's very slow. In a news agency, it's like minute by minute news producing. But they didn't know how I can deal with that, so they put me into a feature stories team for 6 months. Then we had a very bad crop of rice within 6 months of being in that team. So I was put into the press club of Department of Agriculture. Then I started doing the regular stuff that my male colleagues were doing.
And I guess it's just at that point then now it's the work that's standing out. What you're delivering probably is like, oh wow, she's very good at this. And was that it? Was it the way you were doing it, or what got you that push up?
I just don't know. I just did the what I should do, but I think I have done a lot of feature stories other than minute by minute newswire service stories. I just try to do a longer feature story that I talked about, that have a real human stories in it.
Right.
So I try to travel inside Japan, outside Japan. I challenge myself to think of a feature story that I can travel outside, Tokyo,
Right.
and I did that every year.
Right.
And what I mean long feature story is, it covers the whole page of a newspaper
Right.
with a really big photo coming with the story.
Okay, so let's talk about the actual craft of how you do what you do, or how all the things you've done, but all the actual how you did it. So when you're approaching a feature story, first of all, you have a deadline, I would imagine, right? You have to meet a certain deadline. So what are some of the things you do? It involves interviewing people, I guess, and then it's writing out an outline, and then how do you actually do it? What's your day like? What does the journalist do? They get up and they go somewhere? How do you do it?
So two things. First of all, when you are a beat of agriculture, you go to the press club of inside the Department of Agriculture building every single day, like 9 a.m., 10 a.m., and then some people comes 1 p.m. But you check the back then was all the press releases were papers.
Yes.
So you flip all papers and then try to find out something right about. And in every single day you have press conferences from 2 days a week. There are press conferences from minister of the departments. And deputy ministers, and then all the other middle management chiefs in each department. So we, join the press conference and ask questions, and then right away, if you're a newswire service reporter, right away you go back to your seat and then you start writing. And they are very, very short and crisp stories.
Sure.
Because so it was like a game. It's like a sports. So you have that the story is gonna get the big headline right after the press conference. You call the editor, and I have this, and I'm going to tell you the headline of breaking news right away, right now, on the phone. And then he types out. And then it goes to the client news organizations. And then I say in 15 minutes to 20 minutes, I have one paragraph of the story. And then you do that. And in other 20 minutes, you finish the whole thing, which is the maybe a little bit longer
Sure.
than the first one. So that's like, okay, 5 minutes, 20 minutes, 20 minutes.
Wow. And did you like the pace of that? Did you like having to do?
Yes,
Okay.
definitely. I kind of miss that right now because I'm writing much longer stuff
Right.
right now. But I think I really like that because it's the pace, and the pace I think signifies how important that the the piece is,
Right.
how much interest that you get from your readers. So usually if I say to my editor, okay, I will say to you the headline that goes to the front page of all the local newspapers,
Right.
which adds up to 20 million
Wow.
copies.
And do
So
you?
that's kind of
That's very,
exciting.
very exciting. Yeah, but it's immediate. It's right there. Do you?
Right.
Is it the same now? I would imagine the way technology has changed journalism now is. I would imagine the pace is even faster now. It's literally the cycle. The news cycle is so short. It's like by minute.
Right. So when I came to the New York bureau of Kyodo News, that was mostly online. So I didn't need to call my editor,
Right.
basically. So you just type in the headline, and then the breaking news, and then
Wow.
the first lead, and then the second story, second piece. That was all on software, customized
Right.
software for the news agency.
And I would think that the the thing that terrifies me thinking about it is your facts better be on the money, correct, because there's no time. Like what you're writing is going right out, so you have to be accurate.
Right, right. So I still dream. I know how I was horrified by something really big, like when I was on the business news beat in New York bureau. The Nissan Motors announced that they were going to General Motors, and it was filed as a document to security exchange committee
Right, right.
in the
SEC.
US. So that's huge. So, in that case, I had to call my editor in Tokyo, and I just, saw the headline on the Associated Press, and I just, called him right away. But I wasn't using Google Translate or anything like that. So I just had to trust my, ability to understand correctly something big written in English.
Right.
So it was like,
Sure. Because in that form of journalism, business journalism, things can move markets. I would think the wrong word, the wrong.
right. And then believe it or not, the editor that I called told me, no, that can't be happening.
Oh no! Oh no!
It was too huge for him.
Wow! Wow! That's incredible. So
Right.
so how long were you in doing the business journalism? You did that for quite a while, right?
10 years.
10 years.
10,
And
10,
in
7.
Japan, if I read correctly, it's sort of like an understood like a lifetime commitment kind of a thing. Like they expect you to kind of be there, or everybody kind of sticks in that forever, right? Isn't that how?
Right, that's correct. So, I entered Kyoto News, and everybody, including my family, friends, everybody thought that I would work for the news agency for lifelong until I become 60 years old or 61, 62. And in Japan, that's as a matter of course. Everybody does that. Things are changing a little by little. So when I quit Kyodo News to become an independent journalist in New York City, I just called myself an independent. Even I didn't have any assignments back then.
Right.
People thought that I just went mad.
Now,
Crazy.
this is interesting because, again, we're talking cross-culturally here. I'm curious, what do you think that is about sort of that mindset that it's like that seemed strange for them? What do you think that is?
It was just unthinkable to leave a big company like that.
Right.
It's, you had 1,000 reporters. It's equivalent to the Associated Press.
Right.
And then you get paid monthly for lifelong.
Right.
And
So
then you get good compensation for retirement.
So the security of it, they couldn't see you just giving that up.
Right.
And what was it that why did you do that? Why did you want to?
Two reasons. So a year before I quit Kyodo News, I lost my colleague. He collapsed in the office in New York City, in Midtown New York City, and he just passed away because of brain hemorrhage.
Wow.
So after that, all the reporters in the office were so traumatized, and he died 5 minutes before 5 o'clock in the evening. So around that time, I started feeling that a little dizzy, and you have such a fear that you could die like that if you keep working in that pace. And then it was also in New York City you have to work for super long hours. So I used to go to the office at 8 a.m. and then I was back at home like midnight or 1 a.m. because of the time difference.
Wow, yeah, sure.
So Kyodo News had and still has, I think, a little over 50 overseas bureaus. But when it comes to the time difference, I think the New York bureau is the worst place to work. It's just super long hours. So I kind of felt a little burned out after my assignment as the correspondent ended. And also, it was a really tense and busy 3 years and a half. So I really didn't have much time to do feature stories that I wanted to do.
Right.
And then I have been doing for the past 12 years, 13 years since I started working for them. So when I was on the airplane, business class, and I was thinking about my, future in Kyodo News, and then I was definitely wanted to become the first female editorial team member from the business news department. So I was kind of thinking about that kind of maybe fixed feature in the news agency. But on the other hand, I asked myself, I really didn't talk to real people when I was a correspondent.
Right.
And then I really didn't do my favorite human interest stories.
Right.
So I started thinking, how can I do that? Can I become the editorial member? And then after that, can I come back? But then I thought, I have friends in New York City right now. Why don't I come back right away?
Right. So yeah, so the stress, the hours, and it wasn't fulfilling the passion, which was talking to human beings about their lives and their jobs and why they do what they do. Believe me, I totally understand that. I totally get that. You have to follow those passions in your life, because what happens is you do get sick. Your body does come back and fight against you at some point if you don't.
Mm-hmm. And then one of my friends, his name is Harris Salat, and he's a food journalist, and he is, a lover, enthusiast about Japanese food. So I helped him a lot translating Japanese stuff to English, and his stories went to the New York Times, and then that was a great joy that I could help him.
Right.
But on the other hand, I really didn't have time to ask him why you like Japanese food so much, something like that really stuck, in my head. So that's why, I just came back
so
to New York City.
So what are the first things you do when you come back to start to do the thing you really want to do? Who are some of the first people you talk to, and what are the stories you're trying to do? How did you do it when you changed your life like that?
So back then, the end of 2006 and the beginning of 2007, I didn't know nobody who can give me any jobs or assignments. I was just walking around in the city with my camera, taking a lot of photos, and it was super, super fun because, I never did that as a correspondent. After 3.5 years, I couldn't get on subway without flipping, MTA map. I was always in the office, or I was interviewing, visiting people. But as a news agency reporter, you just have to like a straight away back to the office and start writing about it. So I never explored the city. So I just enjoyed something that I never done in the past 3.5 years. And then I started talking to my friends as well. But interestingly, the first assignment that I got was not from Japanese news organization. It was from Daily News.
Wow.
Through a mutual friend of an editor at the Daily News. So back then, the President Bush wanted to send the enhance the troops number in Iraq,
Right.
and he wanted to know what other countries people think about that.
The surge, as they called it, right?
Yes. Right, the surge. So I was kind of picked up to represent Japanese people's opinion.
Interesting.
So I wrote the piece, but I never wrote a news piece in English. So I think it was terrible. After a long conversation with the editor, he nicely, beautifully rewrote it.
Okay.
And it was carried in the Daily News one day.
Wow, that's so your first English written article was the New York Daily News.
Yes.
Wow. I wonder what President Bush thought about those articles when he read them. So this is an interesting question, because I want to get into some of the folks you've gotten to talk to. You've gotten to talk to like Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook, and you recently talked to John Bolton. John Bolton about his book last year about his Bush years and all that stuff. So you've gotten to meet and speak with really high-powered folks. But when you want to do a human interest story, unlike other artists, are journalists inspired? Like, do you wake up in the night and go, "Oh, I have an idea"? like a poet or a painter or an actor or somebody, or a musician, do you get inspired to do a certain job, or do you kind of get an assignment and then get inspiration from that? Which comes first? You understand what I'm saying?
Sure. So all the executives that I interviewed with are for this magazine called AERA, AERA, and it's glossy, prestigious magazine published by one of the largest national newspapers in Japan. So it's like the New York Times magazine.
Right.
So because of its presence, they get appointments with these high-profile people.
Right.
But since I'm based in New York City, they asked me to interview with them. So it's not from my inspiration, but I'm very inspired by talking to them. Sure. But other thing that I'm inspired by, and kind of pitching the ideas of stories, is just talking to people. Okay. So right now, for example, the Black Lives Matter movement.
Right.
So right after it's kind of spread out in the United States, I called my friend Daniel Chavis, living in North Carolina, and then we talked about it. And next moment, okay, I have to write about it, and the headline is going to be like it, and then of course it has to be different headline from those of mainstream media in Japan. So while I was talking with Daniel, he said the Black Lives Matter movement is not good for his friends and peers, because he gets 5 to 6 messages from friends from all over this country asking him, "Are you safe today? Are you safe? Are you all right?" So the movement could make or cause a backlash to African American. That was his concern.
Sure.
So that made my headline. So are you sure? 5 messages in the morning.
Wow. So that brings me to an interesting question about journalism in this day and age. It's a very politically correct, sensitive. There's a woke culture. Do you have to be careful how you write things now? Can you be as free and as truthful? Are you aware of other agendas? That very thing, the backlash that comes from just reporting on something, is that something you have to be aware of when you write today?
Right, of course. But I think, basically that's the agendas that all the journalists have to have, to be balanced. And then, in order to be balanced, you just have to collect a lot of facts, reading, the Associated Press, the New York Times, sometimes you watch Fox News, you collect all the information from everywhere, and YouTube videos, and then you talk to real people.
Right.
Then you think really hard, what position you have to take. Since, I'm not the news agency reporter anymore, I have to put my message into my story right now. So that's, how I kind of process facts and stories from people, and then I have to put my message in between the lines.
Right.
So that's how I really put a lot of time into that, and and then also to be correct, accurate,
right,
to tell the truth as well.
Right.
And to put a lot of data to convince people.
Right. So writing feature style journalism where you have a personal perspective that you're putting into it's an editorial that so there's your what you want to say is underneath, but you got to make sure all the facts are balanced from everywhere so that
Right.
I gotcha. So what is it right now that you want to say? Like, what are some of the things like you mentioned that article, what are some of the things you're looking to talk about right now?
Right now, so just this morning I talked about the Asian hates,
Right.
crime and harassment to 2 radio shows in Japan, and one was for 10 minutes and the other one is almost 30 minutes. So that's really long reporting.
Sure. I'm curious. What is the reaction in Asian countries like Japan? How do they look at that? What's happening here in this country? What's the perspective they have on it? Do you know?
So to me, the reaction was very, very slow, because the shooting in Atlanta, Georgia, happened 3 weeks ago,
Right.
and right now they're talking about it, and they want to know what's happening in the United States in terms of Asian Americans and Asian descent.
Right.
So I really kind of frustrated that they didn't pay attention to the shooting in Atlanta, but now they slowly realize that the Asian means it includes Japanese people.
Okay.
So that's why they want me to talk about it.
Right.
And they gave me all like a similar questions, like, why don't you say, wait, when you are attacked, can you say I'm Japanese? And
Interesting.
oh, no way.
Interesting.
Because a lot of people didn't go overseas from Japan,
Right.
outside Japan.
Right.
And Japan is still the biggest economic power in Asia.
Right.
I mean, the second largest, I'm sorry, next to China.
Right.
And also in Japan, it's very homogeneous,
Yes.
culture and society.
Right. Very sort of closed.
People only know Japanese
Right.
as a race.
Right.
So you never know about racial
Fascinating. So
discrimination or harassment.
So to them, at that moment, it was like there was anti-Asian bias crimes happening in the United States, but it's not us. It must be the Chinese, or it must be like they were thinking it was somebody else. They didn't include themselves in this sort of interesting.
Mm-hmm. Right. And so every time I have to tell in a radio reporting or whether it's TV reporting that average American people don't tell from Japanese, from
Right.
Chinese, Korean, Filipino, even South Asian people like
Right.
Indians, Bangladesh.
Right.
So then they are like, oh, is that true?
Wow. Interesting. Wow. Well, then you are a very important reporter at this particular juncture in history, because you're helping the world outside of here understand exactly what's happening. That's quite a responsibility and a feat that you've accomplished.
Right. But I also want my audience to know that it's not only racial issue. Even in Japan, there are a lot of harassment, discrimination problems against probably single mothers with little kids, disabled people. And very sadly, last year, the COVID-19 patients, and then also healthcare employees were attacked in some places in Japan.
What was, I'm not, why COVID-19?
So people think that these patients and medical employees could bring virus to the society. So it was, so for example, in a very small village, there was one case appeared, and this patient's house had to be guarded by policemen because people started throwing stones, stuff like that.
Wow.
So it's, from bias too.
Yeah.
So, I have to tell that it's not only, about racial stuff, there are so many small layers of discrimination in our society in Japan as well.
Right. And I think you can see when you start to dive into these stories, you really see that the root of all of this is fear. It's the fear of the unknown, fear of the other, fear of losing what you have, fear of somebody, of your life, somebody taking. It's always this fear, and usually unfounded.
Right.
That creates
and
this hate.
I even have, those fears that I try to control that.
Right.
Do you?
Of course, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think as you live your life, I mean, we both know that you go through the darkest periods of your life where you see sort of the reflection of the darkest parts of yourself, and you go, okay, I don't want to be that person. I don't want to live in that fear, because it just turns into anger and resentment and hate, and then it becomes something else. So I think as you evolve, you start to put fear in its place. And I think most people haven't done that. That's what's happening here. And then when you have a media and a world that kind of thrives on it and fuels that fear, it's not a good combination, because people just get angrier and angrier.
Right. So I just let people know that don't those fears overcome you.
Right.
It could happen anytime, against LGBTQ, other race, other ethnicity, other religious people, or someone that look different from you or your family members.
Right.
But don't let fear control you.
Yeah. So let me ask you, I'm going to go back to a little bit of craft, and then I won't keep you too much longer, but a little bit more of the craft. So we talked about the fast pace, how you had to do it, on the phone, type out a paragraph on the phone, and then later on the computer. But in your life now, where you're doing longer form stuff, what is your writing day like? What is your, like, do you work on things for a day, and do you sit down, do you give yourself a time of day where you start, and like, what is the working day like as you write something like this?
Right, so it's very, very different from the pace based life as a news agency reporter. So I will give you an example. Maybe a long story for a news agency reporter means 400 letters, 400 symbols in Japanese. Right now, I am doing something like 4,000 to 5,000. So I really, again, have to collect a lot of information, talking to people as well. But I think the biggest difference is how to structure my story, because the news agencies reporting it's very short and clips. So if you type in all the important facts, that's the end of the story.
Right, right.
You're done.
Right, yeah.
But for a long.
As they call it here, burying the lead. You don't want to bury the lead.
Right, exactly. But right now, for 4,000 to 5,000 symbols story, I really have to craft and structure my story so that people keep reading until the end of my story.
Right.
So the lead is really important. And even after I have everything in my hand, I keep thinking about what could be the lead of the story. So, for example, yesterday I just finalized my story about Michelle Obama. Having read the Becoming, and I was thinking about the lead, and then I just walking on the streets yesterday, and then I just thought, okay, I will start from at 10 p.m. November 4th of 2008 because I was in Chicago.
Oh, wow.
I was in Chicago in Grant Park with 240,000 people.
Wow.
And a lot of, African American supporters.
Sure.
And when we saw the breaking news on big screens in the park, oh my goodness, all the Black people were kneeling down or just lying on the stomach, crying, and I've never seen something like that.
Right.
And a couple stood up and then came to me because I had a big camera, and then they asked me, "Will you take a photo of a Negro couple?"
Wow.
And because this is the happiest moments of our life.
Right.
Sorry, I get a little bit emotional.
Yeah, sure.
But that was maybe the most impressive thing that happened to my journalist's career.
Wow.
And an hour later, I saw Obama and Michelle, and Michelle was she looked stunning.
Right.
And then one thing that that I remember strongly is that Barack Obama called her that she is 16-year best friend and future first lady. He didn't call her my wife.
Right.
And that was very, very, very impressive.
Right.
So I started my story about Michelle Obama
from that point.
That scene.
Wow.
But I always keep thinking about the lead of my next story.
Right.
And that occupies a lot of time. Like, when I'm cooking, I'm walking on the streets, I'm shopping. Right. So,
and I'm sorry.
Yes.
I would think that example it's when you're thinking about how to structure that thing so that you pull that reader in and they can, it's right there. It's something that personally was so affecting to you, so powerful to you. So if it's going to do that to you, you have to assume that the reader's going to feel the same way. So that's how you know it's right.
Mm-hmm. Right. Exactly.
Yeah, you felt it, and it's a human thing to feel that. What an amazing thing! So you covered that whole campaign for Japan, correct? You covered that as a correspondent,
right? So that's 2008. Right. So that was my first presidential campaign,
and
election campaign.
You went around the entire United States and kind of followed the campaign.
Right. I started from Iowa Caucasus.
Wow.
And so far, I think I've been to over 40 states out of 50.
Wow, a lot more than I have. So what were your impressions at that point, and have they changed now that you've been here for so long? Like, what were your impressions of the country as you toured it around? The regular folks, the people on the campaign, the whole thing. What did you feel about it then, and has it changed now that you are here now?
A lot, I should say. Well, that's a tough question because we had, 8 years Obama,
Right.
and then 4 years of Trump.
Right.
And then, that was really different.
Yes.
And of course, when you think about the current Asian hate crime, you would think that, the 4 years of Trump administration, it's affecting this, even though, there is a long history of anti-Asian
Right.
mindsets.
Right.
So this country is evolving, changing, and I don't know if it's going to right way or not. But what I really love about this country and its people is, they're trying really hard.
Right.
For every 4 years, they really think hard and talk about it. And among family members at a bar, everywhere they're talking about it, and then they go to vote.
Right.
So, and then that's how they're trying to lead this country better place.
Right.
Make their lives better.
Right. I think you're seeing, unfortunately for the rest of the world, and somehow for us, is you're actually seeing us work it out live. You're seeing all the internal guilts and sins and things that we have to fix. We do it right out in front of everybody. So you get 8 years of one thing and 4 years. I mean, we literally are two totally different countries sometimes, and we're playing out this experiment right out there in real time in front of everybody. So it looks like these wild swings of ideology, but that's who we are. We're working it out. It's still an experiment.
Right. But I just, really appreciate, the people, American people, for trying very hard every day. And then sometimes you get, good results. For example, the vaccine right now, it's amazing. I think, 3 million people are getting vaccinated right now, whereas in Japan, it's only 6,500 a day. So it will take a long while to get all the adults vaccinated. But people don't complain. They're not trying to complain. They're not trying to make things better.
Right.
As a society.
Right. That's the sort of the trade-off is we have this volatility that's here, but it tends to move things progressively forward, where a more conservative sort of, culture might be more stable, but it suppresses things down a little bit.
Stable and then maybe secure, because people talk about why do I do when I get sick after vaccination. But here okay, we have 20 to 30 people who got really sick after the second vaccination, but they didn't die. So let's 3 million people get vaccinated every single day.
Right.
So that's the power of this country.
Exactly. Now I'm curious. You have faith in the people, and you appreciate the folks of this country. What do you think the responsibility of your art form, your craft, journalism is to informing those people so that they know how to make those choices? What do you think journalism has to be to so that the people can trust it and believe? Like that's a very important part of our Constitution is the media, is the press, the free press. What are your thoughts on that? What do you think the responsibility of journalism is to the populace of the country?
the responsibility is, I think, number one, it hasn't changed historically. It's, very important to be a part of responsibility of civil rights. That's contributing to freedom of speech. It's not only for the journalists, it's for everybody. So, the media organizations and the journalists have to show that you have that right and then freedom, and then, to reinforce, to protect that freedom, journalists are working. So, I really like a lot of reporters and journalists are tweeting right now to 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 kind of interact with readers and viewers,
Right.
and trying to let them know how important their reporting coverage are. Because when it was only printed newspapers and then TV news shows, they really didn't try to do that. But right now, we are kind of very conscious that we are part of society than any other era of this country's history, and reporters and journalists are trying to be one part of society and a real people to protect freedom of coverage and of speech as well.
Well, it's interesting. And the only danger for journalism there, I mean, what's great is it democratizes everybody's voice, where journalists can speak directly through tweets and things right to the people. Politicians can, all these people can, but unfortunately, the danger now is, I guess, those corporations that control that, the Twitters, the Facebooks, the Instagrams, whoever. We have to figure out what their role is in policing their places, because they can silence voices in ways that aren't free. And I wonder if you think that affects how journalism is done. Does that affect how you do your job? That sometimes the voice is held in the palm of the hand of these huge corporations. For instance, you spoke with Zuckerberg, Facebook. I mean, do you get the impression that they have the same value for freedom of speech that we do?
Yes, I think they do. They do. But, they kind of cut the information from their news feeds because they were disinformation and misinformation that could have tremendous harm on the society. And but it's apparently, I think Angela Merkel said the same thing, but apparently it's not these platform companies to make a decision. Okay, this is a disinformation, or this is misinformation, and this guy is good or bad. I think some kind of regulation, governmental or federal regulation, should decide, how to control their monitoring.
Sure, because I think in our best dreams, we want to be open so that we hear it all, the good, the bad, as long as it's not dangerous. But you need to hear everything. Even the university of this country still need to have a chance to hear the sides and let the stories be told on the sides that you don't agree with. And I think that's the best part of what journalists do, right? Is you show us everything and say, you decide.
Right. But fortunately, the traditional journalism survive, any sort of social media, because they're doing the right thing every single day.
Yeah. Did you ever want to do like television journalism? Did you ever want to do anything like that? Was it always writing for you, or did you ever want to be into?
Yeah, it's been always writing for me, but back in 2016, when I was covering Trump's rally, one Tokyo TV station asked me to do like a 9 to 10 minutes footage.
Okay.
So I worked with videographer and then director.
Oh, cool.
Yes, it was fun. It was kind of random. Yes, I would love to do that again.
Yeah, sure. So let's talk about, I'm going to do a couple more things and then we'll let you go. Just a couple of the more interesting folks you've gotten to talk to and because we started with this interview about how you want to get to the human part of these people that you're talking, really get to the humanity and the human interest of it. So when you talk to somebody like Zuckerberg or John Bolton, is that in your mind as well? Are you trying to understand what they're really about, and what was it in some of those examples, some of the bigger examples that you found that was human, that really touched you in any way where you understood that?
Absolutely. So in terms of the interview with Zuckerberg, I always think that I need to put a human, his personality in my story.
Right.
So I asked him, you became a chief executive officer at 25, 26. So how did you learn to become a leader of such a big company? And he said, okay, I read a lot. And I asked him, like how much? I just read a lot. Bill Gates' book and other stuff. And, that was really interesting. And, even someone like him, he looks really smart, but he had to read a lot to become a chief executive. So I really like that part, he talked a lot about the strategy and how to make Facebook bigger, blah, blah, blah. But, I really like that, tiny part of my interview.
It showed his vulnerability.
Right. Ambassador John Bolton was, a very friendly person. So I just started, in the beginning, why you wanted to publish your memoir about Trump administration before the election day. And he started, yes, because people should know what, its country's leader is.
Mr. Trump, top aides, department secretaries, and Republican Party couldn't or can't stop his style of governing in the White House.
Well, I think the chaos comes from the president himself. You ask why his staff didn't convince him otherwise. A lot of very good people tried, and everybody failed.
Everybody, including you, would you say?
Well, ultimately, sure. That's why I resigned.
He really wanted to publish it before the election day. That was the reason. So, that was a really good start of the whole conversation with him. Yes. So, I really love to put some kind of human face.
Right.
Even if it's John Bolton or Mark Zuckerberg or any, high-profile person.
What's one of your personal most favorite interview that you've gotten to do where you really found that story, that human story, and it touched you? Was it the Obama campaign, or what was the one thing in your career where you're like, that's one I look back on and I still feel good about that story?
On top of my mind, maybe Malala. She's a Nobel Peace awardee, Malala Yousafzai. She was a little girl living in Pakistan, and then she was shot in the head by Al Qaeda. And but she was fortunately she fortunately recovered in London hospital, and she started speaking out because it was outside her country. So she really started talking to especially young kids that they have to get education wherever or regardless of any situation. And I think she came to the United Nations and she said something like one pencil can change the world, something like that. I have to look it up, but
Right.
So she is a very, very powerful person, although she's very young. And I interviewed her in London. And again, I had to, I know that she's a super, super smart kid, but I wanted to know, her kid side of personality.
Yes.
So it was only 25 minutes with 6 other journalists that I asked her at the beginning that what was the most happiest thing that happened to you recently? And she said, "Oh, I got all A's at the end of the semester." And I was like, yes.
Wow, that's great. Wow. So it's for you, it's always, there's hope. There's a hope, there's a hope of a future that's educated and free, and a young person like that exemplifies it.
Hope, and then strong message to other people. Even to me, that was really impressive. To have talked to her. I asked her, "You want to be the prime minister in Pakistan?" And she said, "Yes, if I have a chance." And then right after that, we talked to her father. And then I asked the same question, and her father is like, I don't think so.
Right.
But yes, hope and positive side that we can learn, like everybody can learn
Yes.
from the person that I interview with.
All right. That's awesome. Last little thing then. First of all, have you written books as well, or
Right. Yes.
So do you still doing that, or do you have any other kind of book ideas in the future that you want to do?
Right. So I was asked by one of the biggest publisher companies in Japan to write about Kamala Harris.
Oh, okay.
Because she's the first African American and female vice president. So people want to know, why she could do that. What kind of person could do that.
Right.
And to kind of reinforce her life story, I want to add other, inspiring women from this country, such as Michelle Obama, Stacey Abrams, AOC, and the leader of Black Lives Matter movement. Her name is Alicia Garza. To understand more about why, someone like Michelle Obama and then Kamala Harris could be so strong and persistent to pursue their dreams, until it comes true.
Right. Excellent. All right. Last thing then. So what would you say? I think I know the answer to this because I've gotten to talk to you now for an hour, and it's pretty obvious. But what would you say to the young person who wants to set out into a career in journalism, whether it's, hardcore journalism, or feature type stuff, or the writer who wants to be like you, a journalist? What's the advice? What are the things they need to feel and know, and what should they be looking to do?
I don't think it's not only for journalism, but I think it's very, very important to keep doing what you really want to do, what you really love to do. And in that process, you will find a kind of smaller focused area that you can pursue. So, for example, that's human story for me. But, I have been doing business stories for more than 10 years before that.
Right.
But even, when I was a business news reporter, I was interested in human story. And then I was thinking that business and economy are about people's desire, people demand, what kind of life they want to have.
Mm-hmm.
So, it was kind of one thing led another.
Right.
So, even if you are not a journalist, you're an engineer or a photographer, just pursue to find what you really love to do.
Right. That's it. Follow the love, stay away from the fear, and keep the hope going. And I think that's what, and then you'll be okay.
Great summary.
Keiko, I really appreciate all the time you gave me. You're a trailblazer for women in Japan and women all around the world, and journalists in general. And I'm honored that I got the chance to talk with you, and I really appreciate you giving me all this time.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed it, and then I'm honored to have conversation with you too.
Excellent.
It was very inspiring.
Excellent. Well,
stimulating.
Good. All right. I love it. So best of luck with everything, and stay in touch. I'd love to hear all the great stuff that you're going to do.
Sure. Thank you so much.